think it's working? Is it working? I can't tell. Hi, everybody. Soundbooth Theater Live time. Got a fancy new intro thingy. Just kind of slapped it together. Didn't have much time to do it. Did it work? Did everybody see like was the music playing? Did I come in too late? Did the music like stop? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm using OBS now because there's no like regular Google Hangouts Live anymore. For only hearing it on the left. Okay, let me see what I can do about that. Let me see. Advanced audio properties. Balance, left, right. Downmix, let's downmix to mono. There we go. Hopefully that does it. Let me know if that fixed it. I will test out the intro thing some other time without you guys, so I don't have to do it in the middle of the stream, because that would be dumb if we tried to do it right now. But thanks for coming, everybody. It worked. Awesome. Downmix to mono did it. Yeah, so I'm gonna start using OBS now. I guess I'm kind of being forced to. I don't know if I should use OBS or Wirecast. Wirecast seems to have like a few more features, but it's more of a pain in the ass. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I guess I'm gonna have to actually put extra time into streaming from now on, which is not a bad thing. You know, it's just a thing that I've been avoiding for a while just because I never think about it. It's not really avoiding, it's just like I just have so much bullshit going on that I never know what to really put my energy into. And I've always wanted to put more energy into this stream, because it's just so much fun. But today we have 4 requests, one of which is a leftover from 2 weeks ago, The Fallen Bard. Oh, let me do this. The Fallen Bard. Gotta. Wait. How do I do this? How do I point at things? This. The Fallen Bard. By Lars M. He was requested 2 weeks ago, but I wasn't able to get to it because I was dumb, and I tried to do the stream in the airport in LaGuardia, and that was kind of a disaster. But it went okay, I guess. It's on Facebook. It's actually in the Facebook group if you haven't seen it, and you obviously it wouldn't have notified you about it here on the YouTube channel. By the way, our Facebook group link, as all our links, are in the description below. We have the Heroic Villain 2 by Charles Dean. I'll be doing that probably first, actually. We also have Dungeon World 3 by Jonathan Brooks. His series has been doing pretty amazingly so far. I think he's already got audio out for the first 2. And, and The Dungeon Alaria by Joshua Kern. Really, I really haven't heard anything about this one, so I'm excited to check it out. And for The Fallen Bard, actually, I would like it. Now, I think it's the audio's on the low side. I don't know if I can turn it up or not. Advanced audio properties. Volume. Yeah, I can turn it up a bit. Blah, 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 blah. I turned it up 5 decibels. Hopefully that's enough. All right. So, yeah. I started the poll a little bit late because the idea just kind of came to me a bit late. It was to do the narration of The Fallen Bard in a different voice. And so Lars M, Mr. Machmuller, suggested that I do it in Corleone style. So the decision, though, but for you guys is, do you want to hear Brando or do you want to hear Pacino narrate the Fallen Bard? So out of those two, if you haven't voted on Facebook already, please vote in the chat here. I'll keep an eye out. Yeah, so let's get started. I think I'll do Fallen Bard at the very end. We've got 2 votes already for Brando. I believe Ray Johnson voted for Brando. Annalise voted for Pacino. Let's see. Do we have one in here? Michael Polson Durr also voted for Brando. And that's it so far. So I will be watching the chat as much as I can. Looks like we're 2-2, Pacino and Brando. You guys keep bringing in voters, keep voting. I'll keep an eye out. For now, I'm going to go ahead and get started on Heroic Villain 2. Now, I have little doubt. Oh, wow! Holy shit! Wait. That's it? I think okay, so Charles, his request, the request he sent in, was just, it's just an image. He screenshotted the part of the book he wanted me, shut up. He screenshotted the part of the book he wanted me to read. And I guess I should just infer and go as far as I want to from here. So, let me go get this damn book. Because Charles likes to make my job as hard as possible. Let's see. Here we go. Loading. Yes. We're stalling the show. For Charles, as usual. Let's get rid of some of these goddamn tabs. Tab after tab after tab. After tab after tab after tab. Maybe you'll get some better fidelity streaming here after I'm done with... Oh, shit. Oh, God. There we go. Yep. All right. Tab after tab after tab. This is a terrible habit of mine. I had like a bazillion tabs open, and almost none of it was necessary. Okay, we'll leave those. Okay. So here's Heroic Villain 2. And let me look one more time at what the exact scene is. I will search for with the help of her naga. That sounds kind of funny. Okay. Here we go. All right, search faster, Kindle. What are you doing? You didn't miss anything. You missed me struggling with technology and with Charles's inability to follow instructions. Okay. Here goes. Oh, wait, no. I still have Fallen Bard up. Heroic Villain 2 by Charles Dean. I'm going to get started actually recording this audiobook pretty soon after I get back home from Dragon Con. I'm in the middle of recording Monster Hunt NYC 2 right now. That will be done by the end of the night. Then I'm going to do my best to finish Feedback Loop 5 before Dragon Con. And then when I get back from Dragon Con, Annie and I will be working on her voices for Monster Hunt NYC 2, and I will be narrating Feedback Loop 6. And right after that's done, that's when I start Heroic Villain 2. Doing 3 Cooper books back to back that are way overdue. Well, 2 of them are. Yeah. Alright, Heroic Villain 2, here goes. One of us. With the help of her Naga tail, Kate shot over to the pool side and grabbed the still fully clothed Hannah before returning to the pool. Who's Hannah? It's a new character. What the hell? This is 97% into the book. Why does he want me to read it from the end? Charles, what the fuck? Charles, what the fuck? Alright. You know what? Just for this, I'm gonna wait to do Heroic Villain 2 because I think he made a mistake. Alright, so I'm sending him a comment on Facebook. Obviously, Charles wants this to be even more difficult for me than I at first thought he wanted it to be. So let's skip on over to Dungeon World 3 for now. Let's see if he responds and actually wants to help me get this done right. Alright, so let's find... Here it is, Dungeon World 3. Okay, so let me go and look at Dungeon World, the synopsis for Dungeon World 3. Or maybe I'll just do the synopsis for... Oh, okay. He's in the chat. What's he saying? Okay, Charles, what did you want me to do for this book? You sent me an image of one page of the Kindle book, and it was 97% into the book. All right. For now, I'm going to go ahead and... The prologue. Okay. All right. Skipping back now. Back to Heroic Villain 2. Sorry, guys. Prologue. Thomas stared out at the serene lake in front of him. The tranquil waters were surrounded by Hesse's famous wild blue cornflowers and the odd speckling of manually planted patches of red poppies, creating a swaying sea of red, green, and blue. The calm scenery helped still his unusually frantic heart as he took off his backpack and began searching through it. All right, Derek and Thomas. I think these are new characters. Are these new characters? You sure this is the spot? Derek asked, and the rotund dwarf took off his backpack as well. I mean, it's just a lake. The dungeon is at least half a mile southwest of us. It's the spot, Thomas answered resolutely, looking up from his task. This was far from his first time challenging the dungeon. And although each and every trip before had ended in disaster, he knew the place by heart. Grinding his teeth together at the unwelcome memory of his previous failures when attempting to clear the dungeon, he watched the lake for just a moment longer, and then went back to digging through his pack. Who did grinding his teeth? Okay, this is Thomas. I will kill you, Lucas. Okay, Oceanus. Sounds like a chick's name. I'm gonna go with chick. Okay, Thomas should sound like a 19-year-old with ball drop, but they're not big. Okay. I will kill you, Lucas. We'll go with that. Oceanus must be a chick. Pretty girly name. And you're sure this is going to be easier than the other entrances? Oceanus asked. I mean, I've heard this dungeon is nearly impossible to begin with. I'd rather not take the hard route if we don't have to. Thomas finished fishing around in his backpack and finally pulled out what he had been searching for, an herbal concoction resembling a small glass orb that was infused with pure wind magic. The smaller-than-golf-ball-sized globes were just as smooth as the glass they resembled, which made even holding onto them rather difficult, since they threatened to constantly slip out of his hand. Unlike the two lizard men in the group, Oceanus and Janet, neither Thomas, Derek, nor the other human were capable of holding their breath very long or breathing underwater. So, blue balls were the perfect solution for what he had planned. It will be, Thomas answered at last, straightening up and glancing between his companions. Here's y'all's blue balls. You guys got your flippers? Yeah, I got them, Derek answered. He stuffed his shoes down into his backpack and then produced a pair of rigid, thinly scaled, webbed shoes identical to the ones that the rest of the non-mere people were already wearing.
Don't need,
Janet laughed to herself as she began stripping down in front of the group, trading her thick metal chaussées for a linen pair. Chaussées? I don't know that word. Let me look it up. Medieval armor of mail for the legs and feet. Chos. Okay. Chos. Janet laughed to herself as she began stripping down in front of the group, trading her thick metal chos for a linen pair. As a member of the lizardmen race, one of the three mere classes... Mere? Mer? Maybe it's mer. Like merman, mermaid. Races on Hess, she wouldn't need cheap devices to help her navigate or breathe underwater. Lizardmen were natural-born swimmers with long, powerful tails and webbed feet, and as long as she was able to move about freely, she would be just fine underwater. Derek gestured toward the pile of gear that they had left lying next to the lake. Should we just leave our backpacks and come back to them after the waterway is clear? He asked. Players' personal sacks couldn't be accessed by anyone without explicit permission, and they were essentially inventories that would teleport to the player after death or 24 hours. As a result, people often left them lying about whenever they were going into a sticky situation. The downside was that they wouldn't have access to a range of equipment, potions, or gear mid-battle. but it also meant that their movements wouldn't be restricted or hindered by the bags. "No," Thomas answered, shaking his head. "You're going to be the caddy and pull them along for us. We only need 3 people to beat the water boss. You don't have to fight this time. It's the least evolved of the 3 bosses, and it isn't that difficult if you know the trick." Janet gave Thomas a displeased look, making it obvious that she didn't like the way he was holding information back and only trickling it out on a need-to-know basis.
Which is what?
She asked sharply. "We're going to net it," Thomas explained.
It's a giant octopus,
Janet answered back matter-of-factly and clearly in disbelief.
Won't it just rip right through the net?
"No," Thomas answered, shaking his head. "It's going to become rather flustered once it's under the net, and then we'll be able to kill it quickly."
Uh-huh.
Lilith, the other human, exclaimed in understanding. She was a particularly quiet woman who hadn't spoken so much as a single word after Thomas had recruited her for the quest in Borken, the town outside the dungeon. The only thing he knew about her was that she was a rogue-type class, just like he was. She carried a pair of daggers, a bow, and several more tools, but she wouldn't ever give anyone a clear answer about what she specialized in, and she wouldn't let anyone else see what she kept in her backpack.
What? Don't just, Speak up, Lilith.
Oceanus reached up to swat her on the back, but the lizard man's large hand whooshed past and only caught air instead.
Ow.
Ow, what is that?
One of the tentacles will be different than the others, and we'll know it, won't we?
Lilith asked knowingly. "Yeah," Thomas answered, feeling a small bit of relief. He had been worried that he was going to have to carry the group through the entire dungeon on his own, but he felt a little more confidence in the strange party now that he knew that she was quick on the uptake and at least familiar with the concept. He had paid them each a full gold coin to make the run with him, and he had been afraid that it would be completely wasted. "That's right. It's actually more obvious than what you'd expect. As soon as the monster is trapped in the net, it's going to try and gauge the size of the net's pockets. Even if it's freakishly big, has tons of different attacks, and is capable of ripping your arms off, it's still an octopus. It's automatically going to try and squeeze through any tight space it can just to escape. Remember, if its beak can fit through it, then it can fit through it." Janet looked at the thick metal and hemp cords that made up the heavy net they were planning to use on the octopus monster.
That,
Lilith should have Ling-ish voice. Gotcha.
But, its beak is huge compared to a normal octopus, right? There's no way it can fit through this.
"We just need to cut off its special tentacle while it's sneaking through," Thomas explained, shifting uncomfortably. As a guy, it was already hard enough to think about what they were going to do to the creature, and he was glad that Lilith hadn't bothered explaining the situation further. "All right, one last time, since we won't be able to talk with the balls in our mouth. Each of us is going to take hold of one end. We swim as a team. The octopus is rather arrogant, so it's going to swim straight for us when it appears. Trap it, find the tentacle that is glowing red, and cut it off." "But, underwater, we won't be able to really use magic, and, it's going to be a tough fight," Derek worried aloud. "Some of us aren't really capable of attacking underwater." Thomas chuckled at Derek. "That's why you're our caddy. We've already given you permission to carry the bags, so just wait here for 5 minutes and then swim after us. We won't take any longer than that, and we'll wait for you on the other side." Derek frowned. "I better get my fair share of loot." "You will," Thomas assured him. It might have seemed like he was trying to cut a party member out of the loot for one of the easiest bosses, increasing his own chances of getting a good item, but that really wasn't the case. For all Thomas cared, Derek could take every single item in the dungeon. He only had one goal, one purpose, one drive to his existence these days: to find the princess and save her from her abusive captor, Lucas. he didn't care about anything else. That bastard of an NPC stole her from Waldburg, the Alfar capital, chained her up, dressed her like a sex slave, and then paraded her about in his dungeon for all others to see. And likely use. Even now, he could still hear her sweet, melodic voice when he thought about the way she talked. He could recall the way she moved as if she were merely an angel gliding across the clouds. He had fallen hard. He had fallen so hard that he had almost stayed on Noob Island just to be with her. But as the days dragged on, that thought had died little by little. When he had first met the princess, he had walked up to her When he had first met the princess, he had walked up to her confidently, ready to use her quest for quick experience, only to be stunned by how beautiful she was. She had only a simple task to ask of him: help the king subjugate monsters that were attacking fishermen. But the way she had asked it was beautiful. The request had flowed from her mouth as if it had been written by one of the greatest wordsmiths of all time, and as if it had been sung by a siren guiding him safely across the sea. After that, he had tried talking to her every chance he got, which was a lot. He would fall into step beside her and talk to her while she was on her way to help a villager. He would stand beside her in the square as she shopped, and he would follow along every time she sought out new adventurers for her quests, just in case she chose him again. She would spout out a line every now and then that he didn't fully understand, but for the most part, she would glide on silently as if he wasn't even there. Her words had been so few that he had found it easy to hold on to each one, not forgetting even a syllable. When he had asked her what she thought of the Imperium, she had placed a hand over her heart and said, "By the very fangs of malice, I am not that I play. I am no gentle lady of the house. I am truly the twisted, and on conflict do I thrive, as this world I lay both sweet and cunning hands upon, thinking you are the cruelest she alive, if you will lead these gentle graces to the grave." She was such a caring and innocent soul that he blamed herself for every man and woman who had fought and died for the Alfars. She carried each loss upon her back like an unyielding burden, her innocent soul struggling under the weight of responsibility. And that thought made him sick. When Thomas had realized what she was saying, he had pleaded with her. He had tried to persuade her that she was not to be blamed for Imperium's evil doings, but she had just sighed in response and fallen silent once again. Then, after he had finished every task and completed every question that he could find in Walburg, he had decided to confess his feelings to his angel. It wasn't unheard of. He wasn't the first person who had fallen in love with an NPC. They were realistic enough that some people couldn't even tell the difference between them and players, and it was easy to be taken by their charms. Thomas hadn't cared that she wasn't real. He needed to tell her how much he loved her. So, he had confessed. He had poured his guts out and told her exactly how he felt. His precious angel had remained silent and unmoving, as if frozen in time for what felt like an eternity. And then she had smiled and said, "Good friend, your deeds have reached the summit of men within this village, and your intentions I shall keep as watchmen to my heart, to hold my feelings steady as our ways must finally part." So, he had confessed to her again, and again, and again, and each time, her response had been the same. The same voice, the same inflection, the same response. He was crushed. He had dreamed that he would be among the few to marry an NPC, but she had been stuck on repeat, never to generate a new line for him again. The fairy had flown out of his grasp. And then, at last, she had generated one last quest, just for him. This time, it was going to be different. He understood why he hadn't been able to woo her like other NPCs before. She was part of a new storyline the game developers were working on. All he had to do was to rescue her from the vile Imperium, and she would fall in love with him. All he had to do was pry her away from the disgusting tyrant Lucas's clutches, and she would be his forever. She was the first and only NPC he had ever fallen in love with, and she was his first and only concern. Nothing else mattered, especially not any items that might be split up amongst the party today. That was also why he hadn't minded spending some of his real-life money to buy in-game gold and hire crews for all the attempts that came before this one. It was also why he had willingly spent all the money hiring people to help him today.
Okay, people, get those balls in your mouths, Thomas ordered. It's time to get wet.
Those were the last words he would be able to say before the fight, since he followed his own advice and tossed a blue ball in his mouth while simultaneously grabbing hold of his end of the net. The device was meant to last 10 minutes, and it actually had a rather simplistic, easy-to-work design. All he had to do was press the ball against the roof of his mouth with his tongue when he breathed in. Doing so would cause air to flow out of the orb into his mouth and allow him to breathe. Then, while exhaling, all he had to do was lessen the pressure and breathe normally. The process took a bit of concentration at first, since it was rather unnatural, but it had already become second nature after his previous fights against the octopus. The only major downside was that he had to be very careful not to get hit in the chest and have the wind knocked out of him. That had killed him once. This MMO, unlike others, treated breathing as a very serious issue. While stamina had a little gauge, and running didn't deplete it nearly as fast as in real life, air was still a valuable commodity. Even when running or fighting, Thomas had to be careful to regulate his breathing so that he wouldn't wear himself out and feel fatigued. Just after he dove into the water, Janet cast a light spell and filled the entire lake with a bright luminescence. Thomas hated the weird feeling of water on his eyes, and he had never been the type to open them without goggles in a pool, but he put up with the sensation since he had to see. It took a few seconds, but he quickly oriented himself to the feeling and soon spotted the entrance to Lucas's dungeon. There, he thought, pointing toward it so that the others would see where they were headed. Oceanus and Janet nodded their understanding at him and then took off, their powerful tails swishing back and forth as they moved like eels through the water. They were the strongest swimmers and had been assigned to the front part of the net since that was likely where most of the maneuvering was going to take place, and they practically towed everyone along behind them via the net as they swam forward. A minute later, they were inside the dungeon's watery entrance. The massive rock cavern was dimly lit thanks to Janet's spell, and Thomas could just make out the room's features through the blue-tinged water. Thanks to his several visits here before, he was very familiar with the entire place. There were various-sized stalactites hanging down from the cave's ceiling, and massive stalagmites rising up from below, protruding up through a bed of rock and sand. The octopus was the only monster in this entire area, but the problem was that the creature was completely stealthed, and its spawn point was always random. Just like the foul flying beast guarding the front door of Lucas's manor, the octopus would wait completely hidden until it felt it had reached the most opportune moment. Thomas glanced at his party members and saw the panicked expressions on their faces. They were obviously creeped out. Visibility was fairly low in the massive room, and the only thing clearly distinguishable was a ladder on the far side of the room, beckoning them to swim across and climb up. The only one who didn't seem bothered was Lilith, who appeared to be relaxed while holding on to the back right corner of the large net. Just then, movement down below in the murky depths caught Thomas's attention. Before he could signal to the others, the octopus had already surged up from the floor. It shot upward faster than a bottle rocket and streaked toward Lilith. The octopus's modus operandi was to... Operandi or operandi? God damn it. I always forget. I'm going to say operandi. The octopus's modus operandi was to... The octopus's modus operandi was to attack the party from the back as it tried to pick off the weaker, more frail-looking members first, but Lilith was completely ready for the attack. Her arms snapped out, and a small, silvery object went spinning through the water. The moment it came in contact with the octopus's outreached tentacle, it exploded. Although it was only a small burst, even smaller than a firecracker, the concussive blast rippled back through the water and slammed into Thomas hard enough for him to feel it deep in his chest. He automatically sucked in a deep breath and clutched at his chest, dropping his corner of the net. Thankfully, however, he caught himself before accidentally swallowing the blue ball he held in his mouth. He panicked when he realized what he had done, and then again when he realized that Oceanus and Janet had also dropped their corners and were clearly just as stunned as he was. When he looked back toward Lilith, however, he was shocked to realize that she was furiously swimming downward toward the creature. The heavy net had begun sinking the moment they let go of it, and it had fallen almost directly on top of the momentarily stunned mini-boss. Judging by her pace, Lilith was aiming to take advantage of the situation as quickly as she could. Thomas began swimming after her, and it was then he saw exactly what he had been waiting for. The octopus's entire body flashed white, but that one special tentacle flashed red. Even through the dim lighting and fuzzy water, their target was incredibly obvious. The octopus recovered in the next instant and almost immediately shrank down in size as it contracted its body and began searching for a way out. It twisted about as much as it could while trapped in the net, and when it realized that it wasn't going to escape so easily, it began lunging forward with its beak and snapping at the hemp webbing. Lilith arrived in the next instant and slashed out with a knife, cutting deep into the bright red tentacle. The moment her weapon sliced through its flesh, the octopus freaked out. It expelled the remaining water from its body, shrinking down to a ridiculously small size until it looked like a deflated balloon, and attempted to jet away. But no matter how much it tried to escape, Lilith had already grabbed hold of its special tentacle, and she was pulled along with the monster. Most of its body turned white, but little letters appeared on the octopus's face, spelling out a message in black via its chromatophores. "Let go! Please don't! I'll let you through!" Lilith seemed to pay attention to the words for a moment, and then patted the creature on the head. The gesture looked very gentle, and the monster even calmed down for a moment. But the peace didn't last long. The pat she had given its head in the water wasn't done with love, affection, or even understanding, and it turned out to be nothing more than a ploy for her to get a better grip of the monster. Thomas realized her hands must have been slipping as the octopus dragged her and the net, and she had almost gotten caught inside the trap too. Then, while holding on to the creature's head with one hand, Lilith began viciously stabbing her knife into it, repeatedly plunging her blade into the beast. Bright red blood blossomed up into the water, and she drove the knife into its flesh again and again until she almost completely disappeared in the churning red water. Thomas, Oceanus, and Janet watched on, completely absorbed by the brutal sight in front of them.
"You have killed Fred the Octopus, dreaded fiend of the depths. You have been awarded 500 experience. A calligraphy set and 50 large seashells have dropped upon death."
Yes! With her, we can definitely defeat Lucas. Thomas felt a new surge of confidence sweep through him after witnessing his new hire's abilities. He marveled at Lilith's precision in particular, and for good reason. Players who chose one of the various races other than human often found themselves in control of extra arms, long tails, webbed feet, or other numerous examples of exotic alien features, so the majority of players in the starter area weren't extremely familiar with how to handle their bodies. Humans were generally one of the exceptions, as their in-game body structures often matched exactly that of the players, allowing them to quickly adjust. Even then, however, most people spent the majority of their lives behind desks and had little to no training in combat. Adapting to the demanding nature of fights within the virtual world wasn't an easy transition, and it didn't come naturally to very many people at all. Some companies had even gone so far as to set up dojos and martial arts studios to help players compensate for the issue. By training their body and their mind-muscle connections in the real world, players were much more able to adapt quickly to combat within the virtual realm. Since dive machines kept their users' bodies in peak physical condition and provided them with optimal nutrition,
devoted players were often able to develop extraordinary talents. The game did its best to provide players with skills after they advanced far enough in their class, but those types of skills didn't come right away. Early on, most people relied on the game's innate mechanics in order to complete fights, and, as such, most players struggled early on. They flailed around aimlessly, they didn't react quickly, and they weren't prepared for the battle. Lilith, however, was one of the few that Thomas had ever seen who seemed perfectly fluid in her motions. Her reactions were perfectly timed, she was clearly trained in the use of at least one weapon, and while she was a bit savage, she was brutally effective. It gave Thomas hope. With her, the princess, my princess, won't have to spend the rest of her life as some object under that sadistic tyrant's control. I mean, sure, she's going to have to adjust to being rescued at first. Who knows what they put that poor AI through. But over time... He paused as he recalled the beautiful Alfar woman, her glorious dark brown hair, her vibrant violet eyes, her sweet smile and creamy, silky skin. Over time, she'll learn to be happy again. I'll treat her so kindly. He couldn't help but imagine the life that they would have together. Images of her sitting in a little chair like a perfect NPC wife, their little cozy home nestled in the trees of Waldberg, the meals that she would prepare from the fresh rabbits he would bring home, and, of course, the walnut pies that she would bake. That's right, Lilith. You'll make my dream come true. Smiling gleefully, he swam after the black leather-clad woman who had already discarded the monster's corpse and made her way over to the ladder. Okay. I think that's far enough. They defeated Fred. They're about to go in. And considering this is the very beginning of the book, I have a feeling I know what's going to happen next. At least in a binary, are they going to make it or not sense. So yeah, I like how this book starts off with people cutting off an octopus's penis. I think that's a really unique way to start a novel. I know. So thank you, Charles, for requesting this one. Heroic Villain 2 is going to get its own Sound Booth Theater Live anyway. I think we should do it. Annie and I should do it together when she's here, recording voices. I think she's going to be recording voices for Monster Hunt NYC 2, and probably for Everybody Loves Large Chests 4. So, fuck it. We might as well do the Sound Booth Theater Live while she's here with Charles. So, Charles, you be ready for doing that after DragonCon. Pick out some actual scenes, like, and make sure we know, like, all the new characters and stuff. All right. So, who else is here? I forgot to take roll. You know, Justin has done a lot of things in this stream that I've decided to steal his ideas. So first of all, I want to see who all is actually here. So before the stream started, we had Michael Polson Durr waiting. Sin was there. Frank Avila was here. And a dude's name in Chinese that I can't pronounce because I can't read Chinese was here. Philip D. Hernandez is here. Cove 0011 asked, what about having guest narrators on the street, like, for instance, the person who does Michael Chatfield books? I'm totally down to do that. You know what? I have an idea. How about we start another requests-only poll? And in that requests-only poll, what we're going to do is so we'll have one poll like we've always had, what stuff are we going to narrate? And then the other poll will be, what narrator would you like to see guest
guest appear, and it's it'll be just the number one. So, now since they're people, we can't just have you guys request them and expect that to make it onto the poll. We have to get the requests in the comments, and then the narrator themselves will have to agree to do it. And then it'll have to be like a 2 weeks in advance thing. So, for instance, if we put the poll up, or maybe even 1 week is fine, we can put the second poll up now, and then by next Sunday, whoever's number one in the poll will be the one to join me for Sound Booth Theater Live Request Sony only. So, Danny Katz, if you are watching, do you think you can set that up for us? And anyone who's watching now, the way to do it would be to just go to our Facebook page. The link is in the Facebook group. The link is in the description below. And go vote on that poll. And well, first, tag your narrator. Like, tag whoever it is that you want to volunteer to be on Sound Booth Theater Live. And if they comment and confirm, yes, I'm down, then Danny, you can add them to the poll. How does that sound, everybody? All right, so who else is here? Big Buddha, Charles Dean, of course, Jacob Santos, Exiled99. Yeah, well, see, the thing is, we won't actually be doing the stream that next Sunday. We'll just be determining who is going to be, like, by the end of that Sunday, the person who will be joining me will be determined by the poll. So whoever's at the top of that poll. And then, oh, Joshua Kern's here. Cool. Joshua Kern is Exiled. So yeah, so that they have like a week to make sure that their schedule is cleared for that request only. But on the poll, it needs to be clear, what date that Sound Booth Theater Live will be. And there has to be a disclaimer on the poll. Yo, narrator, we may do some cringy shit, so you better be prepared. Okay, so what do you guys think of that idea? And who else is here? Jeff Morris. Thanks for checking in. Good to see you, man. All right, so Richard Haygood. All right. Good to see you here too. All right, so our next request will be Dungeon World 3 by Jonathan Brooks. Here we go. Now I'm going to go read the synopsis for the first Dungeon World. In a distant world 5 times the size of planet Earth, dungeons and their dungeon cores have become the top of the food chain. Millions of dungeons inhabit the planet, utilizing the various human kingdoms as a source of much-needed mana to facilitate their own growth. In turn, the humans delve into the dungeons and acquire their own power in the form of essence, which allows them to develop and enhance themselves in a multitude of different ways. It is a symbiotic relationship that has lasted centuries and has brought about a measure of peace. Far in the northern wilds, where no humans, and therefore no dungeons, regularly frequent, a young man is left alone when his parents are murdered suddenly and unexpectedly. Now, without friends, family, or even supplies, he embarks on a journey to find out who targeted his parents and who he needs to enact his revenge upon. Along the way, he discovers something about himself that his parents said was impossible from the moment he was born. Will he learn to control the new powers he has gained, or will his newly awakened dungeon core abilities consume him? All right, well, that sounds... nose. Why must my nose itch? I'm doing a show. Stop it, nose. So that's the synopsis for book 1. Sounds really interesting. But let's go look at the synopsis for book 3 now. And you guys, This spoilers warning. I'm sure there must be some kind of spoilers here. It is a sequel, so it's probably going to be going off stuff that happened through book 1 and 2. So spoiler warning. Close your ears if you don't want to be spoiled. Following a miraculous resurrection, Fred, the half-human, half-dungeon core hybrid, managed to reunite with DC, his helpful direwolf guide and companion. Not only that, but he was able to perform an equally miraculous resurrection of Isa, the human woman that had professed her love for him just moments before the tragic event of their deaths. But would she be the same as she was before, or would she be forever changed by the unique process that had brought her back? Accompanied by a friend from Fred's past, the group journeys to the west in search of the core power guild and the townspeople of Gatecross. Along the way, Isa discovers the strange new abilities that she now possesses, abilities that are very similar to DC's, the shape-shifting direwolf that travels with them. Eventually, they arrive in the Deadlands, a constantly decaying landscape filled with undead monsters of all types. Information on the guild's whereabouts are easily found, but Fred and his friends aren't forgotten by the nature and earth cores that he had inadvertently destroyed. Is anywhere in the world safe enough to create a dungeon that will keep his friends, and those he loves, protected from the threat that the factions pose to them? Only the broken shards of the dungeon cores he left behind know the answer to that. All right. And when did this come out? Wow, this is book 3. It's number 254 in the Kindle store. It's killing it. And it came out August 22nd, so just 3 days ago. Fucking killing it, man. All right, let's see. Do we have any more votes? I think we're still just 2 and 2 for Pacino and Brando. So we need more votes, guys. Mikhail Eggmark just called himself present. People should be leaving to buy Heroic Villain 2. Heroic Villain 2, yes, is in the description below. All the books that I am narrating today are in the description below, except for, oh shit. Except for Fallen Bard. Let me fix that. Well, I'll fix that after the stream. It'll be there, don't you worry. Yes, there is consumer demand for Heroic Villain 2. It's coming, guys. Don't worry. Oh, my God. All right, so here goes our character descriptions. And don't forget to vote for either Pacino or Brando for reading Fallen Bard. The scene is from the viewpoint of Isa, who was earlier in the story resurrected by the main character, Fred, short for Fred Winkle-Mossering, the half-human, half-dungeon core hybrid. She is now a shard and can now use the same mana that dungeon cores can use, though in her case it is just earth mana. Regnark is a large human berserker/marksman that is covered in bear furs and has just recently joined the little group. He's getting a Russian accent. DC is Fred's guide and is a direwolf that can change her shape from a direwolf pup to a giant direwolf. Fallen Bard is being worked on. I think there's a set ready for my voices on it. It's not going to hit proofing for a little while, but it's coming. The Halfway Transparent... Oh, sorry. Dungeon World 3 by Jonathan Brooks. The halfway transparent screen that popped up was similar to her normal adventurer interface, but instead of being called that, it instead said Shard Status. It also referenced that she was at Shard Level 3,
which she assumed was like some sort of rating. That was the only thing she could compare it to, at least. Excuse me. Isa hadn't seen the screen at first, and it was only when Fred had bombarded her with a large influx of Earth mana that it popped up. At the time, it had said Shard Level 2 with a maximum Earth mana of 120, and that she had the special ability of Earth Elemental form. Excuse me. She had tried it right away, desperate for something that could save her at the time. It had felt extremely weird at first, as her body felt like it was hardening and inflating a little bit at the same time, but after a few seconds it just felt like she was wearing a really thick bodysuit that clung tightly to every part of her body, including her head. She wasn't sure if she had been actually inside the compacted dirt that surrounded her, or if her body had changed completely, but overall it was comfortable and normal feeling, and she felt powerful. Well, powerful enough to destroy those goblin gnomes, at least. Isa wouldn't have wanted to test her form against the quite a bit more dangerous crystal scorpions. She thought that it was likely she would have been smashed apart just as easily as her normal human form would have been. As it was, though, she reveled in the fact that, with just a thought, she could transform her arms and hands into bladed instruments of death, which she used liberally on the small, ugly creatures attacking her. Jonathan Brooks is here. What's up, Jonathan? Thanks for requesting Dungeon World 3. Is there anything that you'd like me to do with the narration here that'll make it a little bit more interesting? I'm just narrating with my normal voice right now, but you can toss me an accent, or toss me a character that you've heard me do, or... yeah, we can try anything else if you want, just for fun. Just let me know in the chat if you decide something. She hadn't spent much of her adventuring career on the front lines attacking monsters with her brute strength, which wasn't much when compared to the ones normally up there, but after that fight she could see the appeal of it. Using her own strength to destroy the monsters had a certain appeal to it that staying back and using skills and abilities from afar couldn't give. Upon reflection afterward, however, she realized that the front-line melee life wasn't for her. If forced to do it, she would, but she felt more comfortable staying out of direct confrontation. Unlike Regnark, apparently. She was in awe of his physical prowess, not to mention the sheer size of him. While Isa had seen bigger and more powerful DAS members while she was with her old group and closer to the capital of the Kratian kingdom, the ferocity of the fur-clad man's attacks was a bit scary. Fred had mentioned offhand that he was a berserker marksman class, which seemed contradictory, but it also seemed to fit his fighting style. Glendon Peacock is here. Wolf Runner, good to see you too. Except it says Wool Runner. Your name got fucked up, man. Okay, Regnark. I was gonna do Russian, but that doesn't seem appropriate anymore for some reason. I'll keep it Russian, fuck it. Regnark was so big, in fact, that he had to have one of the crystal scorpions all for his own to ride. His weight was a little more than Isa's, Fred's, and Dece's combined, though she believed it was almost entirely muscle underneath all those bear furs covering him. As a result of his bulk, however, his scorpion-based ride was forced to slow a little bit down to make sure he didn't break its back when it maneuvered this way and that. That might be a little exaggerated when its crystalline exoskeleton was considered, but she could definitely see it straining just a little bit to stay walking normally. They made fairly good time after leaving the flattened remains of Gatecross, striking out towards the west through the forest. She was hopeful that they would eventually find the Guild and the Gatecross townspeople, but they had apparently had a month's head start. While they were moving at probably twice or even 3 times the speed that the bigger group was likely moving, it could still take weeks of travel to catch up with them. And not only that, but the time was dramatically increased as they were forced to take detours to avoid some of the stronger Earth-based monster scouting parties. The first monster party they came across shortly after leaving Gatecross was fortunately not that strong. A dozen human-sized stone golems had blocked their path, and it was quite likely that they were heading towards the commotion they had caused a short while later. Isa instructed her scorpions to go around them, but the golems were quicker than she thought they would be. They turned their bipedal forms into large boulders and rolled after them, keeping up with or overtaking the faster crystal scorpions. As a result, they were forced to stop and take care of them. Everyone jumped off of their rides and got ready to defend themselves, but her own defenders waded into the mass of stone golems with deadly efficiency. They held off from using their tail stingers, as the poison in them wouldn't do much against pure stone. However, they used their pinchers to great effect, literally slicing the golems in half with a pinch or two. Within less than a minute, and a minimum damage done to the scorpions themselves, all of the enemy monsters were destroyed, and she collected their earth mana they left behind. They all received a little more essence, about 300 each, as a result of the fight, and they were on their way. When Isa had checked her shard status again after that fight, to see how much earth mana she had collected, she had the ability to create another defender, a stone golem. She mentioned it to Fred, and she could see that he was a little envious for some reason. When she asked him what the issue was, he admitted that he couldn't get blueprints for dungeon defenders from killing them, only from absorbing them from dungeon cores. While Isa felt a little bad at first, Fred told her that he was proud of her and that it just proved how special she was. She could see her DC exaggeratingly gag at that statement, which sounded strange coming from a direwolf pup, but she didn't care. She felt her heart warm at the thought that Fred considered her special. The next few hours were filled with fighting and fleeing. The forest was so inundated with earth monsters that Isa was surprised that her group hadn't been swarmed while they were still inside Gatecross. Along the way, they faced off against monsters that they thought they could defeat or whom they couldn't outrun. In one instance, they fought against another small band of 3 crystal scorpions with their goblin gnome passengers, but it was made much easier as Ragnar's stamina had recovered a bit since the fight back in Gatecross. He proved how good of a marksman he was when he peppered the faces of 2 of the scorpions with powerful and accurate shots, and the third was taken apart by Isa's own giant bugs. The goblin gnomes weren't really a threat anymore and were easily defeated with a combination of Ragnar's warhammer, Fred's knives, and Isa's earth elemental form. After the battle, and before she turned back into her normal body, she caught Ragnar looking at her funny.
"What? What's wrong?"
she asked him, confused at what looked like a smirk on his face.
"You do know that when you do that, you're not," he began, before Fred cut him off with timely throat clearing.
"I'm what? Nah? What does he mean by that?"
What?
Nay.
Okay. Why did I forget how to do a Russian accent all of a sudden?
Iliana. Yes. This is number 1 bullshit. Okay. You do know that when you do that, your
"I'm what? Nay? What does he mean by that?"
She looked down at herself for the first time since learning how to use her new form, and saw that she was essentially nude without a stitch of clothing on her. The compressed dirt her earth elemental form was comprised of didn't match her curves entirely, but it was close enough that it looked like her, only it was the very dark brown of dirt instead of bare skin. She let out a little yelp and immediately covered herself up, but she turned away from the staring looks of the 2 men before she turned away from the staring looks of the 2 men. Using her ability to manipulate her form, Isa created an approximation of her normal dress covering up her body. It was actually quite easy and stayed in place even when she took her attention away from it. The only downside was that it wasn't free-flowing like normal fabric, instead staying adhered to her body in an extremely form-fitting ensemble. With a little experimentation, she ended up slitting the middle of the dress up the middle near her legs, which allowed her to move freely instead of having them restricted in what otherwise felt like a long tube of compressed dirt.
Why didn't you tell me about that earlier, Fred?
She asked as she turned around, glad that the embarrassing blush in her cheeks couldn't be seen in her earth elemental form. At least she hoped they couldn't see it.
I'm sorry. I thought it might upset you again, so I didn't mention it. You look lovely, by the way,
he responded with sincerity.
In my dress or before?
Both,
he said, with a smile on his face. Now she was doubly glad they couldn't see the blush on her face. On her face. There we go. Now she was doubly glad they couldn't see the blush on her face. All right, that's Dungeon World 3. Just a little introduction to the characters, a little bit of detail happening there. And yeah, and again, this series is selling like crazy. So if you guys want to see what the fuss is all about, the link is in the description below, as well as the link for Heroic Villain 2, which you guys should definitely go pick up. And actually, I think when I put the Fallen Bards link in here, I'm also going to put the link to Heroic Villain 1 on audio. If you guys haven't noticed, that one has been kicking ass as well. You should check out the reviews. People are loving the way the production turned out, and I loved performing that book. So that's it for Dungeon World 3. Thanks again, Jonathan Brooks, for requesting that one. Now, a book I have no knowledge of whatsoever, Joshua Kern's The Dungeon Alaria. By the way, who else is here? Do we have any new people? Have people been coming in and out? And do we have a new population going on here? Anyone who wants to say hi, please? And I'll say hi back. And also, don't forget, we are still waiting on votes for either for me to narrate The Fallen Bard as one of the two Corleones, either Al Pacino or Marlon Brando. Nighthound, what's up? Good to see you. Thanks for coming by. So, let's see. We are 2-2 right now. Two to two. We have one Pacino from Annalise Rennie. We have both Raymond Johnson and Michael Polson Durr voting Brando. Who else? Someone else voted for Pacino in the chat earlier. Eric Rounds is here. Good to see ya. Let's see. Frank Avila voted Pacino. So, yep. 2-2. Someone break the tie. Or whoever wants to. Bring in your votes as well. And I just realized I didn't tell Discord that I was doing this stream. Oh my god! I'm gonna tell Discord right now. Bam. Hopefully we'll get more viewers. Alright. Oh, we got another Pacino. And a Pacino and a Pacino and a Pacino. Okay. So, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's 7-2. Pacino to Brando. So if anyone wants to see Brando, any of you voters who already requested Brando, if you want to try and catch up, go get more people to vote for him. Bring him into the chat. All right. So, let's see. On to Joshua Kern's Dungeon Alaria. Where that at? Feral Hogs. Varnoth. Dungeon Alaria. Here we go. Did I already switch the... Yes, I switched the cover already.
Alright, so let me go read the synopsis. Getting some action in the Discord server. Alright. Nothing terribly important. Okay. Okay, 7-3, Pacino to Brando now. Michael Eggmark just voted for Brando. Alright, Dungeon Alaria by Joshua Kern. This was released June 1st. Still selling decently well. Alright. The world of Alaria is changing, and the goddess who created it has no idea why. On the eve of the apocalypse, Liam is transported to another world, along with his house. Liam was waiting for his father to come home from work when the house shook, and 2 moons appeared overhead. Stranded within a land where he doesn't speak the language and people are set on attacking him, he must survive in this new land where nothing makes sense. Our gorgeous princess holds the key to him learning about this new world he has found himself in, and little of it is good news. First up, learning why people keep attacking his house. The series is set in the same universe as The Game of Gods and contains elements of Gamelit. Okay, The Game of Gods. Let me look that up. Okay, this one did pretty good too. Released on March 6th. 78 customer reviews. Pretty cool. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. First, I want to clean my glasses, because they're smashed up. See if I'm sure Danny will start the new I don't know if he's watching. If he's not watching, I'll go ask him if he heard what I said about the new poll, and I'll give him parameters for it, so he'll set it up for you guys. I like the idea of having guest narrators on more often and guest authors, but the thing is, I gotta figure out how to do it with OBS. Alright, here goes. Dungeon Alaria, and we have some character descriptions here. Liam is an electrical engineering and computer science student in his 2nd semester of college. He is a somewhat awkward person with a good heart who doesn't like the fact that he now has to kill people in order to survive. Alaria is the goddess who created the world of Alaria alongside her husband, who later betrayed her. She has since locked him in a prison of her own design for the last 4 million years. She has a commanding voice and expects to be obeyed no matter what. Eileen is Liam's mother and a queen of the neighboring kingdom. She is a mess emotionally. The accident on Earth sent her back to Alaria, where she was originally from, forcing her to leave her son and husband. She's been doing the bare minimum to stay alive for the last 11 years. She is overly protective of her son. Okay. Did I say her name right? Eileen? Yeah, okay. Ellie is a princess 1 year younger than Liam that is now living with him. She cares for him, but is afraid of certain aspects of herself, forcing him away from her. She tends to be flirtatious with him and uncertain of how he feels. In this scene, Liam is meeting his mother for the first time in 11 years, maybe, after thinking that she had died in an accident on Earth. He has been using an actually real, but modified for the story, coping mechanism where he takes certain memories and emotions and places them inside a locked mental room. Okay, so... Oh, what's up, Slayer? Slayer NZ, Slayerns. Good to see you. Okay, so just for fun, because I've been narrating with my normal voice this entire time and just kind of been doing the standard narration, I want to go UK accents with this one. It'll be fun. Alan! Nice. Yes. I need to remember to tell Discord that we're doing this every fucking time, because you guys just almost doubled our population here.
Mom?
Liam asked in shock.
Nope.
Liam asked in shock.
Liam?
The woman, who looked like a pale, thin version of his mother, whispered back. With a gasp, Liam rocked forward as he felt something splinter and tear apart in his mind. Barriers that he had spent years constructing to block memories and emotions he couldn't deal with came crashing down. He collapsed, falling through the doorway and into Ellie's arms, as everything went black.
You really shouldn't cut pieces of yourself off, little one.
A loud, booming voice rolled past him and continued into the far black distance.
Oh, I always forget how weak your human eyes are.
There was a snapping sound, and light flooded the world. Fuck me. A large, shadowy form stood in front of him.
Who are you?
I am the dragon.
I am the dungeon. I am the world, and my name is Alaria.
The shadows shifted into the form of a tall, bold, long-eared woman with dark lines running across her skin. Liam blinked and shook his head.
What happened? Why am I here? Something caused the very foundations built into your mind to shake and shatter. The rooms you have so painstakingly built and occupied with pieces of yourself broke open all at once.
Her long ears twitched and shortened as long, luxurious locks sprouted from her head, cascading down to the middle of her back. Well, good to see you. And guys, don't forget to vote. I'm gonna be narrating Fallen Bard as either Marlon Brando or Al Pacino. So you tell me which one you'd rather hear. The marble-like ground was shot through with moving clouds of white, surrounded by streaks of blue, gold, and black. Liam sank onto the hard, unforgiving ground. His eyes were wide, and his pupils blown out of proportion.
Oh, I don't feel so good,
he muttered, as a wave of nausea washed over him.
Do not fight the resurgence of your memories and emotions. They need to be merged with you once more. You do not understand the damage that you have done to yourself with those rooms.
Alaria's voice thundered, shaking the very foundation on which they stood.
You cannot cut off a piece of yourself and still expect to be whole and functioning like normal.
Her form shortened, becoming stocky, with thickly muscled shoulders and small breasts. Liam sprawled out on his back, holding his stomach and curling into a ball. Whimpers fell from his lips relentlessly as Alaria stood above him, watching with cold, dispassionate, and pupilless eyes.
You're lucky I am here to help you. If this had happened in your old world, your mind would have torn itself apart. You would have been brain dead and in a coma for the rest of your days.
She stepped toward him, her form shifting from short and strong to an ethereal mist from one step to the next. Diaphanous hands that pulsed with a glowing golden and silver liquid gripped his head. Her forehead sank down to his, her cloud-like skin refusing to disperse and dissipate when met with the pressure and heat of his.
Let me help you. This world is going to need you. There are forces at work that have hidden themselves from me. Something lurks in the darkest corners of the world now, the corners where my reach has been severed or cast out. I will need your help to regain control. Her words echoed in his mind as their foreheads touched. Liam whimpered one final time and straightened with a sharp intake of air. His muscles bulged and the veins all over his body pushed against the pliable cage of his skin. Alaria held him in place to maintain the contact of their minds. With sure, deft movements, she skillfully placed the pieces of his fractured mind back into position. With every piece she fixed, she added small amounts of information that would trickle through his brain, helping him in time to come as his brain healed. She hadn't been lying when she said he hadn't known what he had done to himself. A mental exercise such as the rooms was never meant to be used constantly, and it had never been meant to mix with mental magic. Liam was a child of her world and his, and the resulting gift had been mental magic, a gift that had been suppressed due to the lack of magic in his world. It had lain dormant until he created the rooms. Then it had worked to reinforce and excise the portions of himself that he wished to hide and forget. His ability needed to be sealed for now until he was able to control himself better. She would let a small part of it remain, a part that he could practice with and that would prove useful in the days to come. She pulled away from him and watched as his muscles slowly relaxed and the veins that had been threatening to escape the bonds of his body receded. Liam's eyes flickered open as Alaria stepped back.
"It's time for you to wake up."
She sighed and flicked the middle of his head between the eyes with a suddenly clawed hand.
"Good luck.
You're going to need it." His head fell back in slow motion, his eyes never leaving her transforming body until his head cracked against the ground, and she was a dragon once more. Liam collapsed into Ellie's arms, and the world around them erupted into chaos. The barrier that had prevented everyone from entering the house flickered into being, allowing everyone to see it for the first time. The barrier twisted and darkened into a dome that encompassed the house and pushed everyone away. Ellie found her feet sliding in the dirt, struggling to keep her arms wrapped around Liam's limp form. Eileen took hold of Ellie and pulled her away, Liam's feet dragging limply on the ground behind them. The ground next to the house cracked open, the protective dome forming a divot around the growing hole. The knights had jumped from the horses at the first sign of trouble and surrounded the carriage with Ethan and Eva still inside. The king and queen were hustled into the carriage with them, and the door thrown closed, locking them in. Ellie found her arms being pried apart by Liam's mother as she took her unconscious son from Ellie's greedy hands. Liam hadn't moved or even twitched since he had collapsed after seeing her. He was completely limp. Seeing him like that was messing with Ellie's mind. He was hurting, and there wasn't anything she could do to help him. Another Pacino vote, 8-3. The ground shuddered, and the hole next to the house began to change. Dirt shifted to stone, and the stone into stairs. The stairs led down into a deep, dark abyss that could only be the dungeon coming to the surface once more. The ground stilled, and everyone paused, waiting for what was surely to come. The soldiers and adventurers hadn't entered the dungeon for a week now. A howl split the air, and the rhythmic pattering of countless beings climbing stone steps followed a second later. One monster after another appeared at the top of the stairs, peeking their beady eyes above the stone that surrounded them. Howls, growls, and chitterings that not even Ellie could understand fell from the lips of the gathering dungeon monsters. Each group had their eyes on the humans, salivating with hunger. Above Liam's still form, Ellie growled back. Here was something she could do. She could keep him safe from the monsters of the world. The weight of the revolver pressed against her hip as she shifted positions reminded her of its presence. Next to her, Liam's mother continued to hold her son with a determined expression spread across her face. With a sigh of regret at not being able to use the weapon again herself, she unsnapped and withdrew the revolver.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused. Who's who again? Eileen is Liam's mother. Ellie is a princess 1 year younger. Okay.
Take this. Liam made sure it was loaded before I left earlier,
she told the older woman, holding it by the barrel as she proffered the weapon to her.
I'll keep him safe,
Eileen said, as her hand wrapped round the still familiar grip.
You won't get the chance,
Ellie said, as she shook the knives she had strapped to her forearms. Ellie said, as she shook the knives she had strapped to her forearms down into her hands.
I'll be the one protecting him.
8-4, Pacino to Brando. The monsters from the dungeon had made no move to attack, seeming content to let their numbers swell before the inevitable slaughter. Each knight could handle a beast or two on their own without a problem. However, they were already long past those numbers. The standoff lasted for several more seconds before a rat the size of a dog flicked its tail against the ground and charged. The dungeon had been known for using animals, and that is exactly what was attacking them now. Giant rats stood next to an even larger fox with multiple tails and a squirrel riding on its back. Each animal had been changed in some way by the dungeon, making them smarter, faster, larger, and willing to work with other species. Gary Simmons, I don't know if I've seen you here before, or if you had said hi before, but hi! Okay. The knights yelled at the oncoming charge, their blood rising to the occasion. Ellie simply grinned, spun her knives, and stepped in front of Liam where she had room to work. Beneath her hands, Eileen could feel Liam twitching and the muscles around his mouth moving as though he was talking. She had a feeling she knew who he was talking to. She had gotten a glimpse of the terrifying being once before.
Let him go, Alaria. He is not one of your dungeons to control and play with. He is my son, a son that I have not seen in over 11 years because of you.
Eileen's voice was full of venom and spirit as she felt more alive than she could remember since being back. Liam's mouth continued to move, but the voice that came from him was not his own.
I am fixing him for you. His mind has become fractured and unstable since you left him.
Eileen barely held her tongue, not daring to interrupt the goddess.
You are not wrong, but you are not quite right either. He isn't one of my dungeons, but the method by which he appeared here forced a piece of myself into him. It would be more accurate to say that he is now the child of us both. I will do what I can for him, but it will be up to you and the girl to educate him and keep him safe. He has more power than he knows, and the knowledge he wields from his world will help to maintain the balance against the coming storm.
Eileen looked up from her son and to the mad, giggling girl that was Ellie. The knives flashed and spun, tearing through skin and hide with an indifference that sent chills down the watching woman's spine.
Is she safe? She seems to be more unstable than Ryan.
She is, but as you know from experience with her mother, what? Okay, that's right. She is, but as you know from experience with her mother, those she cares about are safe from her. She feels strongly for your son. As long as you don't place yourself in her way of being with him, then you will both be safe. Either way, she will never hurt him due to her nature. Liam is about to awaken when he does. When he does, tell him he needs to retrieve his weapon. Excuse me. I made some modifications to it, but he is going to need it soon. The enemy is coming here with a large force intent of the destruction of his dungeon. He must not let that happen. Liam's mouth closed, and a shiver ran through his body, as an energy she had never felt before circulated through him a final time and dissipated. Liam groaned and tried to sit up.
Why am I outside the house? Why am I outside Fuck me. Why am I outside the house? The house? Why am I outside the house? The house?
Why can't I say that? Ryan or Rianne?
Why am I outside the house?
There it is.
He asked weakly. Eileen laughed and clutched him to her chest, the rest of the world falling away for that one precious moment. Mum? His voice was so full of hope at the prospect that she was real it almost killed her. It's me, honey. She closed her eyes and forced herself to focus. We'll have to talk about that later. Right now, you need to go inside and fetch your weapon. Alaria said you're going to need it.
Rianne? All right.
He stiffened at the mention of Alaria and sprang to his feet, ignoring the monstrous animals that had suddenly stilled with his return to consciousness. Overzealous knights continued to attack until they were grabbed by those around them and their arms held to their sides. Ellie followed Liam to the dome that protected his house, the dark swirling colours retreating in front of him. Liam stepped through the barrier and invited her inside. Ellie, we need to grab the ammo and the guns for you and Mum. He led her into the basement and immediately saw the completed weapon he had the dungeon create. It sat on a silver table in the middle of the floor, directly in front of the screen. Liam looked away from the weapon into the map in the corner and cursed. His mother hadn't been joking. They had enemies incoming. A lot of them. Grab everything, he ordered. He ordered Ellie, pointing to the cage in the corner. Her own eyes had seen the same number of red enemy markers as he had, and she jumped into action. The weapon looked like a reproduction of his rifle, except for the two small dials on either side of the trigger guard and the ammo magazine that extended an inch under it. With gentle, almost reverent hands, Liam picked it up, surprised at how little the weapon weighed. The recoil would have been a problem with a rifle this light. It was a good thing he wasn't planning on firing regular ammo with it. He would have to incorporate the runes or another system for recoil in the future. It was with that thought that he realized there were no runes showing anywhere on its metallic surface. He had meant to hide them eventually, but hadn't discovered how yet. Something or someone had changed more of the weapon than he knew. Bringing the gun closer to his face, he studied the words printed in small type right next to the dial on the left side, above and to the front of the trigger guard. It read, "Power output," and then a small arrow was currently pointed at the ground. He didn't know how the design had changed, but this was a welcome addition. Being able to make the gun stronger or weaker would definitely come in handy. On the other side, he saw 4 labeled options above several blank spaces indicating more could be added in the future. The first option read, projectile, the second, air, then lightning, and the last, ether. Depending on the options selected, he could fire rounds of compressed air, bolts of lightning, pure magic, or something as simple as a rock or iron ball. For now, at least he would be firing air and magic. He wasn't sure about using any form of lightning attack near the metal-armored knights.
What's up, Vice Perez? Haven't seen you here yet. Thanks for saying hi. And say hi anybody else who's new. I see we have 18 people now, and I'm sure people are rotating, so.
For now. No, wait. He didn't have any projectiles he could use at the moment, so that ruled that option out as well. At least it was now no longer a single-shot bolt-action rifle. The inclusion of the magazine under the stock meant it was at least a semi-automatic. Ellie had the 30-06 rifle and shotgun slung over her shoulder, with all the ammo in her arms as she came to a halt behind him. We need to get outside and warn everyone. They don't know that more enemies are incoming. She pointed to the entirely metal rifle in his hands. Did you make that while I was gone? I haven't seen it before. Liam didn't respond as his eyes were focused on the message that had appeared on the screen. The dungeon has been connected to host system. Dungeon capabilities are now online. Ability to summon monsters is now online. All summoned monsters are under the control of the host and floor bosses. Levels 1 through 5 of the dungeon have been released. Further levels may be unlocked through MP. Current denizens of those levels exist inside a space where time is frozen. The current boss of the 5th floor level is the Kitsune Cow. He noted that the corner of the screen had changed to say level 5, as the message on the screen changed and then disappeared. Ellie grabbed his arm and pulled.
Come on! We have to get upstairs and warn everyone. Our parents are up there.
Liam grinned at the unfamiliar thought. His mother was indeed alive, and up there waiting for him. He could spend the time to look through everything later. He looked around the basement quickly, making sure they had everything, and followed after the princess.
And that's it. So, Dungeon Alaria, I think it's an interesting concept. It's pretty nice writing, except, dude, you gotta get an editor to look at your comma and period use. That tripped me up many times. It actually lent itself well to that British accent narration and all the characters. So thanks again, Joshua Kern, for requesting Dungeon Alaria. If you guys want to check it out on Kindle, the link is in the description down below. And yeah, so right now it's looking like 8-4 Pacino versus Brando for the narrator of The Fallen Bard. Let me go ahead and switch our covers over. Bam! Right, Liam's family is Irish. I figured his name's Liam. That's why I gave him an Irish accent. All right. Thank you, Glendon Peacock. All right. So let's find our request for The Fallen Bard. Here we go. When are we drinking again? That's a good question. I think it should be while we're in DragonCon. Before I get started here, I want you guys all to know that there is going to be an SBTL streaming party from DragonCon, but not from DragonCon itself. I actually rented a big fuck-off house for everyone to stay at. We will have almost the entire SBTL crew there. I will be there. Annie Ellicott will be there. Mr. Justin Thomas James will be there. Ms. Lori Catherine Winkle will be there. Ms. Andrea Parsnow will be there. Sin Vasquez, or Dalton Lynn, as some of you may know her, is going to be there. Aurelia Vasquez is going to be there. Sin's daughter, if you didn't know. Shemer Kuznets is going to be there in the flesh. He's flying all the way from Israel to come to Atlanta to hang out with us at the SBTL Party Mansion. And one other person I'm missing. There's one other person. Nicholas Legrand of Gamelit Society fame will be there as well. Also, Charles Dean is probably going to come over and hang out. I don't know if it will be for the stream itself, but we're all going to be... I'm sure we'll have at least 2 laptops there so that we can go back and forth. But so that we don't have to depend on one screen for everyone to be on, and so we can all hear each other. We will be drinking a lot. I'm thinking we can start at like a 9 Central. But yeah, it's going to be great. I'm really excited to see everybody. This will be my first time actually meeting Miss Sin Vasquez in person. Mrs. Sin Vasquez in person, who is actually, besides me, the oldest member of Sound Booth Theater. And when I say oldest, I mean, like, has been working for Sound Booth Theater longer than anybody else besides me. So, super excited. Super excited. I'll keep you guys updated. I will post on the Facebook group. I will post in the Discord. I'm going to have to figure out with everybody when is best to do it. Maybe it'll be Thursday night, because there's not much going on at actual DragonCon on Thursday night, so we won't have to worry about missing anything. So yes, please, guys, keep an eye out for that. It will be a really good time. And I'm so retardedly looking forward to it. What did I just do? Did I just leave the right? No. No. William Simmons. I don't know if, yeah. Does that mean you're leaving before I do the Pacino? Because it looks like, it looks like 8-4 Pacino. I didn't see any other comments in Facebook. I don't see it. Yep, no other comments, no other votes. So 8-4, we're getting Pacino. All right, so we have two people in the scene. One's the MC, Arcangelo, the bard of the local village, who will be played by Al Pacino. He's 32 years old, not the most patient of sorts, but an affable type, generally. His voice is upbeat, and as bards do, he enunciates clearly. Well, I'm throwing all that out because it's going to be Al Pacino. The other person's his bard teacher and teacher of sonic magic, Grek. Yes, Grek. Grek's an old alcoholic kobold who's got a bit of a mean streak and humor to match and a bit of a temper. He also believes in letting people learn by themselves, only guiding them as necessary. His voice is rough and snarling. The blurb is as follows. Our MC has convinced Grek, his bard teacher, to spend a little time educating him in bard magic, sonic magic, and they're gathered in the forest in Grek's clearing.
Defense. He clapped his hands together, startling me. How did it take you so long to reach that conclusion? It must be a side effect of being a reborn, decreased survival instincts. And yes, that is a completely logical idea. How would you go about solving your dilemma?
The best possible solution to me would be some sort of passive spell. Something I can cast and then not have to worry about it afterwards. Some sort of shield, maybe? He grinned.
Tough luck, kid. You've picked the wrong sort of magic school for that. A summoner can apply long-lasting spells on his summoned creatures. Shamans have all sorts of interesting internal changes that they can effect on themselves. Some of them even permanent. But sonic magic? Sonic waves are born of motion and remain in motion for exactly as long as defined by the medium, spell and abilities of the caster.
That took some digesting, and I mused out loud. So, nothing that remains fixed in place. Is that what you're saying? My own abilities can also increase to improve the spells, and of course, the spell itself has some limits which can improve with time. Now, my venerable, yet extremely reticent teacher, did you or did you not confirm that it is possible to create some kind of shield spell with sonic magic? Something that is not static. His many-toothed grin confirmed my suspicions. Gods. Wrestling useful facts from Grek felt a lot like convincing somebody online that they were wrong. It could be done, but the work involved often made you feel you'd be better off not trying. Eventually, he drained his glass and stood up.
I do believe that you've reached a level of control where you might be able to manage this. Now, what would you want to ward yourself from? Physical attacks or otherwise?
I answered promptly. Physical. Ranged and close combat, if possible.
And how would you go about maintaining such a shield?
I suppose I'd have to maintain a constant image of what I wanted in my mind. And I guess, if I wanted to be able to do something else at the same time, I'd have to do it without playing.
Yes, and also?
The difficulty of what I'd been trying to do just hit me.
I'd experienced how slippery spells were even when I was only casting them without music. I will also have to learn how to maintain the image of this spell fixed in my mind at the same time that I cast another one. Gods below. Is that even possible, Greg?
It is. It's more of a mental knack than it is a real test of your skills. However, you do need a certain minimum of aptitude, which I believe you have obtained. Barely.
I snorted. Thank you for that vote of confidence. How should I proceed?
It will be rather difficult for you to play around with the spell if you haven't mastered the spell yet. Correct?
Well, thank you, Captain. Never mind. So, a shield with sonic elements in constant motion. I recall you saying that sonic waves always travel in a straight line? That grin again.
I don't know. How's my Pacino? It's okay, right? I haven't really even tried to do Pacino before. This is just an attempt. Does he need more gravel? I'm not doing the one from Godfather 2. I guess I'm doing like a general Pacino. If I was should I be doing the Godfather 2 Pacino? Or the first, from either one? Any opinions?
That is the simplified version. It is also the one we will remain with for now.
Yes would... Let's see, let me try the younger one. Yes would also have worked just fine. Is it possible to create a sort of pulsing forces that push outwards from the body at short intervals and push away anything?
As Scarface Pacino? Dude, this is... You guys are maybe going to be mad at me for this. I haven't seen Scarface yet. But I think I got it. I've seen enough clips of it.
Damn! Too expensive. No, wait.
It surely is. What do you believe the mana drain would be from a full-body sonic wave shooting out every half-second or so?
Damn! Too expensive. So... what if I were to use a series of waves that shoot around me instead at fixed positions and angles? Theoretically, it'll leave some openings, but if I time them to overlap and get used to their presence and positions...
The mana drain from that would be less costly. As always, while you are attempting to learn a spell, use music. The alternative is unnecessarily difficult.
What's that face, Glenn? Is that terrible or what?
I nodded my understanding and walked off a bit to practice. Atlas, predictably, had gorged himself and was fast asleep in the tree. The image of the spell was relatively easy. Me placed inside a constant, ever-renewing swirl of sonic waves that would hopefully push interfering weapons, arrows, and the like off course. Now I just needed a song. 10 minutes of failed attempts made me discard my first idea. Even though I was envisioning the spell to be sort of a ring of protection against my enemies, Ring of Fire just wouldn't hack it. What a shame. I'd always liked the song, too. No, I needed something less massive, more flittering, like the flight of... Oh.
Shocked at what? Is this a good shocked or a bad shocked? Come on, guys, I need feedback.
I need feedback. I need feedback over here. Need some crowd interaction, some audience participation in here.
All right, I'm gonna go for Godfather, like younger Pacino.
I nodded my understanding and walked off a bit to practice. Atlas, predictably, had gorged himself and was fast asleep in a tree. The image of the spell was relatively easy. Me placed inside a constant, ever-renewing swirl of sonic waves that would hopefully push interfering weapons, arrows, and the like off course. Now I just needed a song. 10 minutes of failed attempts made me discard my first idea, even though I was envisioning the spell to be sort of a ring of protection against my enemies. Ring of Fire just wouldn't hack it. What a shame. I'd always liked the song, too. No. I needed something less massive, more flittering, like the flight of... Oh.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I enjoyed happy-go-lucky music, the musical equivalent of candy, light in calories and guaranteed to put a spring in your step and a smile on your face. And I did smile when the light tones of the song Fireflies spread through the clearing, and I earned my pop-up. Congratulations! You have learned a new spell. Veil of Sound. A series of sonic waves surround you, constantly phasing in and out of existence. The waves help ward the caster, pushing away or diverting incoming physical attacks or objects. 8 waves are held in motion. Every skill point to Veil of Sound increases the force of the waves. Properties. Range, personal. Cast time, 0.5 seconds. Mana cost, 1 mana per second. Stat, charisma.
Oh, come on, guys. You don't have an opinion on my Pacino? This is bullshit.
This is bullshit. You guys aren't even paying attention.
Okay. I kind of like doing the louder one.
Triumphantly, I slowly walked back to Grek while holding the spell active. It was really rather pretty to look at, like being inside a translucent cage of constantly moving vapor trails. My foul-smelling curmudgeon of a teacher was having a good time. He was juggling random items with a smile on his face, constantly procuring and hiding items within his voluminous rags. Clearly, he was also pretty drunk, as the occasional fumble led to an item tumbling to the floor or a graceless stretch to catch a wayward ball. A sudden thought intruded on my mind. Then second thoughts and third butted in, asking me to please reconsider, but I was already striding forward with a huge smile on my face.
Oh, of Augustus from War Eternus?
Where'd it go? Where did it go? Hey! And sure, I might regret this, but the sacred name of Handel was the look on his face worth it. Oh, and sure, I might regret this, but by the sacred name of Handel was the look on his face worth it. First, one of the waves hit square in the middle of the juggling path, causing half the items to fly askew and an apple to zoom straight past Grek's head. The large O his mouth made caused me to giggle uncontrollably. I took one additional step forward, and 3 further waves hit him in the chest, side, and leg, pushing him slightly backwards and causing him to balance precariously on one leg before he regained his equilibrium.
Ow, fuck. Ow, my balls. Okay, so the last one would be the softer one.
Like this. The astonished look on his face was priceless. Watching it turn to rage, I barely had the time to think, uh-oh, before I was buffeted from all sides by gale force winds and firmly deposited on the ground several meters away. I looked up at Grek, who was stalking closer, and another giggle escaped my lips. This soon devolved into a bout of full-blown hysterical laughter with me placed on my back, pointing up at Grek, trying in vain to make the words come out right in between peals of laughter.
Why do my balls hurt? What's going on? Not sitting right.
Ha! 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 Gods! Your face! I broke down again. You should have seen your face. The thunderous look on his face changed after that, and he smiled the most devious grin I'd seen on his face to date. Good trick. Wait, who's saying this? Oh.
Good trick. Good trick. Let us see if you regret that at a later date. Oh, and if you made me spill the wine, that date will be today.
He walked back to where he located the bottle and wine glass, fortunately unscathed, and poured the last remnants of the first bottle. It's cancer!
Oh, flesh-eating Jeebus, is this the first time you're saying anything? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Let me see it. Farther away this time. And no music.
I cast the spell again without the violin, and immediately it felt like the spell was trying to get away from me.
Wait a minute, so what's the consensus here? Or the majority? Nighthound likes the second one. Mikhail likes the loud one. I think we're tied for loud and soft. I don't think anybody liked the Scarface Pacino. He was loud too, but he had the not very convincing accent that Pacino has from the Scarface movies.
Say hello to my little friend.
Like, it just sounds like an Italian guy trying to sound like a Mexican guy, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I need to watch the whole movie to get it, but I don't know. All right, 3-2. Softer one.
I cast the spell again without the violin, and immediately it felt like the spell was trying to get away from me. My control felt slippery, and it was more difficult to maintain the image in my mind. Sweat sprang out on my forehead, and I struggled to keep my focus as my mana slowly dwindled. Close to 4 minutes later, I heaved a sigh of relief and let the spell slip from my grip, looking at the single mana point that was left to me. I'm out of mana, Grek.
Good. Rest until it's replenished. Then the real training begins.
His words sent chills down my spine, but I still let myself sink gratefully down to the soft, inviting grass and closed my eyes. The weather was blessedly warm, and a slight breeze carried a wonderful scent of clean nature untouched by man. I let out a sigh and folded my hands behind my back. It seemed like only seconds had passed when a decidedly unfriendly boot prodded my side, and Grek's raspy voice said,
Do you wish to learn or not? Get up.
I fought my way to my feet and tried to clear the cobwebs from my mind. Obviously, it hadn't been... Oh, my mana was back to full. I'm ready, I managed, and Grek motioned at me to get on with it. I started casting the spell again and slowly regained my bearings as I settled back into the monotonous struggle of maintaining the shield. After a few moments, Grek spoke up.
Have you got it under control?
I nodded.
Good. Can you talk while you keep the spell under control?
I think so, I ventured.
Great. Then you're ready for the next part.
I looked at him in curiosity. This quickly transformed through realization into horror as I noticed the items next to Greg. A large pile of sticks, rocks, and rubbish. My glance shot from the pile to Greg. He was throwing an apple up into the air and catching it again with a huge smile plastered on his face. "Oh, no," I burst out.
Oh, yes.
He laughed and threw the apple. The shield fell apart in my mind, and the apple hit me in the shoulder, hard. Affronted, I looked up at Greg, who was busy deciding what to throw at me next. This was going to suck. And suck it did. At first, my spells kept fizzling out as I tried avoiding Greg's missiles and keeping the veil active at the same time. Following that, I tried standing stock still, but the sight of a rock aiming straight for my head proved too much for my instincts, and I lost focus when I ducked. When my mana mercifully ran out, I was subjected to a round of inquisitive questions, delivered with way too much glee.
Why do you believe that you are unable to keep your focus?
Do you think it would help if you didn't jump around like a tumbler in the middle of a seizure?
What is the point of activating the shield if you do not trust it?
The words were harsh, and Greg really ought to tone it down a bit. But the meaning was clear.
Stand still and trust in your protection, damn it!
I regained my mana, and we went straight back into it. This time around, I focused on remaining completely still and trusting in the spell, and, miracle of miracles, it worked. This might seem completely logical to, well, anybody, but it's damn hard to deny all the ingrained instincts of your body when a stick the length of your torso comes flying towards you at high speed. I tried to close my eyes exactly once. It helped a lot for a few seconds, but then suddenly I was flying through the air. I hit the ground, gasping in pain, when realization kicked in. The little bastard had hit me with a sonic push. From across the meadow, Greg shouted,
Do you believe your adversaries will allow you to close your eyes mid-combat?
Groaning, I got to my feet and recast the veil of sound. Sure, he was right, but couldn't he just have said so? Still, the training helped. Soon, I felt comfortable trusting in the veil and had a pretty good idea of where and how the waves were placed. Of course, this is when Greg started really testing me and the spell. He'd thrown several items at the same spot, challenging what the spell could handle, and then he started propelling items along faster with a well-timed sonic push or throwing them at the weak spots of the spell. My feet and the top of my head. Once he even shot an apple way too high, and I smiled in pleasure. Right until he gave the damn thing a sonic push from behind, causing it to rocket into my back at full speed, hard enough to leave a mark. It did get the point across, though. The spell had several weak spots, and I'd be forced to move around while maintaining the spell to account for those. Made sense, too. We rested in between sessions, and Greg's questions became less pointed and more specific. I slowly began to enjoy myself again, relishing in the chance to explore the intricacies of the spell, the limitations and possibilities, and the change from physical tests to mental tests allowed me to both wrap my head around the concept and get my body used to it. I've thought about it, Glendon Peacock. I've thought about it.
Where are the weak spots?
Feet, back, and possibly between the shoulder and neck.
What is your best recourse when the opponent is a heavy hitter?
Move just far enough away that the spell can repel the rest of the force.
What if your...
Oh, motherfucker, why? Why, balls? Why are you doing this to me? All right. Oh, my God. Ow, ow, ow. I'm like, I guess I'm sitting on my balls? I don't know. Ugh.
What if your adversary attacks with several light attacks, but lightning quick?
I'd Have to look into that. Wasn't sure the spell could cope with too much speed. When I forced myself to my feet next time, I felt good. Confident that I was slowly getting the hang of this. The skill had even increased to 2 from the practice, and I had a smile on my face when I summoned the Veil of Sound one more time. Of course, Grek managed to destroy that with 5 words.
Time for the real test.
What? What more could he come up with? I had this spell pretty much figured out now, and I just needed practice and... Oh. My face fell as I realized what I'd managed to forget. I would somehow have to manage to do all the things I'd learned up until now, and, at the same time, manage to cast other spells. Grek just grinned. I'm certain my face underwent a series of interesting changes right then. He said,
I recommend you start with something simple.
And tossed the first stick, which was promptly guided aside by one of my sound waves. All right, simple.
Ah, God.
They still feel like they're, up in... Never mind.
I said to myself, mentally preparing a sonic missile. The first attempt went completely awry as all spells failed at the same time, and I was rewarded with a nice clout to my head. I received the same result for every single attempt thereafter. I just couldn't keep my mental focus up and concentrate on casting a spell at the same time. It required a degree of schizophrenia I couldn't quite wrap my mind around. When I threw myself to the ground for the next break, my body felt like one large tapestry of welts, and I'd even gained a nice 6-hour debuff. Bruised, that reduced my agility. At this point, I'd finally deduced one thing about Grek's teaching methods. They worked. Even though it felt like he was mocking my incompetence, his questions allowed me to focus my own questions and mental investigations and hone in on what was pertinent. And hone in on what was pertinent. What the fuck? How come it's hard to say pertinent with this accent? Okay. Good thing, too, or else I'd have exploded as he kept digging at me.
Why are you unable to add this last layer to your casting?
Because... hell if I knew.
What could help you maintain control?
Same answer.
What are the exact actions that you need to perform in addition to what you can already handle?
Oh, that gave me an idea. The next session felt less like a beating and more like training again. I still took the occasional hit, but I was getting somewhere. I remembered the old quote, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." And that's exactly what I did. First, I added playing the violin while maintaining the Veil of Sound, the melody for the sonic missile spell, over and over again. When that was done, I added the image of casting the sonic missile in time with the rest. Finally, I forced the spell into being. It wasn't easy, and took a good deal of false starts while the bruised debuff was upgraded to heavily bruised, but eventually, a sonic missile shot out into the clearing while the Veil of Sound still floated around me. I sat down heavily on the grass, panting, and just reveled in the sensation. That had been a lot harder than I had imagined. I closed my eyes, exhilarating in the feeling of the breeze cooling the sweat on my brow. When I opened my eyes, Grek stood over me with a bemused look on his face.
"Here, you earned this,"
he said, and handed me a half-full wine glass. I know nothing about wine. I've always preferred beer or soda. The taste of this particular glass, however, was heavenly, plain and simple. I held up the glass to Grek in a toast, and he drained the rest of the bottle in response. We shared a brief moment of companionable silence, and I reveled in the appearance of a new pop-up. Congratulations! You have learned a new skill. Multicast.
All right, that's it. That is my shoddy attempt at Al Pacino reading The Fallen Bard. So, after this, I am going to go get the link to The Fallen Bard. I'm going to add it to the description below. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. Thank you to all the new people who I don't think I've seen here before. If you enjoyed this Sound Booth Theater Live, requests only, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff, because that's what it takes for this show to get a little bit more popular. We like having guests. We like having people come and enjoy themselves while we read audiobooks. And actually, you know, we want to keep evolving this poignant. We want to keep evolving this show and make it better and better. And the more viewers we have, the more motivation we have to do that. Keep an eye out for another Sound Booth Theater Live, maybe coming up this week. At the very least.
What is your quest? What is your favorite color?
Keep an eye out for the party that we're going to be doing at Dragon Con at the Crazy Mansion. The Crazy Dragon Con Mansion. Everyone except for Will Watt, basically. Well, everyone except for Will Watt as far as the actors are concerned. Bonnie Price was supposed to be there. She's apparently not going to be there, and I don't know why. If you guys are Bonnie Price fans, you should harass her and get her to come hang out with us at Dragon Con. Yeah, so Will Watt's not going to be there. Bonnie Price isn't going to be there. Ahmed Mahmoud and Griffin Malnar, our two engineers, will not be there either. But perhaps next year. We're going to miss them. And yeah, that's about it for the show. So keep your eyes out. Join the Facebook group if you haven't already. Check out the Gamelit Society if you haven't already. Thank you for coming, and peace out. I think. Let's see. Hold on. I haven't figured out how to end the stream yet. I'm just going to stop streaming from here. And hopefully it'll stop the YouTube thing. I don't know. Bye!